so excited to have my new friend Jennifer on. Welcome.
Thank you, Lisa. I'm so excited to chat to you.
Yeah, we've communicated a little bit. You're not really a new friend, but when you just like message each other and then you get to talk online and you see each other face to face. And so it's like going deeper and understanding more of your work and the impact that you're making. So I'm so excited to have you on my podcast.
Thank you. Thank you. No, it's been a long time coming because I think, as we were saying before we hit record, our work is so aligned and there are a lot of
Yeah,
overlaps in the way that we approach all of this beautiful information. So can't wait for our chat today.
I know. Oh my gosh. Well, tell us. So you're based in Australia.
I am, yes, I am. It's 10 a.m. in the morning for me, which makes it afternoon for you. It's like always tomorrow in Australia. But yes, I'm
Ah.
based in Sydney. I lived overseas for a very long time and
Mhm.
moved back to Sydney about 3 years ago. So that's me.
Wonderful. And I know a little bit about you, and I'm just hoping we can start with your story and then get into I have some juicy questions for you, but I'd love to hear like a bit of like what drew you into supporting women in fertility, and your specialty is more in Pilates and yoga. You specialize also in breath work, meditation, and like what has made this work so personal and important to you?
Oh gosh. Okay, it's a long story, but we'll go the short
Yeah.
version as much as we possibly can. So I started teaching Pilates in 2009 and I kind of fell into pre and postnatal work. The physiotherapy clinic that I worked in at that time, they specialized in that area. So that was something that I really enjoyed and I really focused on. I
Mhm.
was in my mid 20s. And I was just always surrounded by these women who were pregnant and, they'd have the babies and they'd come back and they'd do the rehab. And I just had no concept that that would be difficult for me when I wanted to
Mm.
have my own family. So I met my husband just before I turned 30, and we got married when I was 33. And, we were relatively young in the scheme of things when you're talking about fertility. We didn't have
Mm.
any health issues. We had no reason to think that we would ever have trouble trying to conceive.
Mm.
So after we got married, we thought, amazing, let's do this. We moved overseas for my husband's job and we thought, let's just start trying. So I went off birth control and my cycle never returned. And it was sort of something that I thought at the time, oh, okay, well, maybe it takes a few months. So I went back to my doctor and she said to me, look,
Mhm.
it doesn't always happen straight away for some women. It can take a few months for your hormones to re-regulate. Don't worry, just keep waiting. So we waited and we waited, and it got to
Mm.
about the 12-month mark, and we started to get quite worried. And I remember my doctor saying, this actually isn't normal. You should have gotten your period back by now. I'm going to refer you to a fertility doctor. So we went along to the fertility doctor, and I'd had all sorts of blood work done, and everything was quote unquote normal. They couldn't see anything that was wrong with me. But this
Mhm.
fertility doctor ran a few more tests and did a few ultrasounds and a few scans. And he said, come back and see me in a couple of days. We'll give you all the results. And I remember going back into that office and he was this older guy. Had this like glum look on his face. And we sat down in this little room. He passed this piece of paper across the desk to me and he said, I'm sorry, but I think you've gone through early menopause. And I
Mm.
was shocked. It wasn't even on my radar that this could be an option. I mean, my mum had gone through menopause when she was 50. I
Mm.
thought this wasn't a real thing, and
Yeah.
surely there was something he had missed. And he said, well, look, I don't think the numbers lie. And on my ultrasound, I think I had one follicle in one ovary and none in the other. And he said, look, if you really want to have a baby, I think we need I think his words were, we need an aggressive treatment option. So we can do that. I recommend that you start IVF and you start it straight away. And I
Mm.
wasn't quite ready to jump into that immediately. I said, is there anything else that we can do? He said, well, why don't we try to see if we can get you to ovulate? So I think we did about 3 or 4 rounds of Clomid and it didn't have any impact on my body. So we
Mm.
jumped straight into IVF and I found it so intense and so overwhelming. And I didn't respond to the medications at all. And I would go back every day or every couple of days and they'd do a scan and they'd take my blood work and my body just didn't respond. And they'd keep upping the dosage and upping the meds and nothing happened. I think
No,
after
tell me
about
what
two
what wasn't
weeks,
Sorry to interrupt you. I was just curious, what wasn't happening? Were you getting embryos? Were
So
you
that
getting breasts?
my follicles didn't start to grow. There were no eggs
Okay.
being recruited by my ovaries, and
Okay.
my estrogen levels were flatlined. They were less than
Oh.
100 after 2 weeks of very high dose stims. So there was
Mm.
zero response from my
Okay.
body.
So egg retrievals. Okay. Yeah.
Yes, so there were no eggs to retrieve, sadly.
Yeah.
They got to the end of those
Mm.
2 weeks and I had no follicles. There was no rise in any of my hormone levels. And for anyone who hasn't been through
Mm.
IVF, this is bad. It's really not what you want.
Mm.
So we were left kind of in a bit of a difficult place. And the doctor kind of shrugged her shoulders and she said this was a different doctor to the one that we'd initially seen. And she said, look, I don't know what else we can do. Maybe take 3 months off. You can try a few more supplements, come back and we'll try again. I didn't really think that was good enough. So I went and did as much research as I could. I found a doctor who kind of specialized in what was going on with me. I worked with a wonderful fertility naturopath and we
Mm.
prepped for about 3 months. And this new doctor that I went to, she didn't really like the protocol that they'd had me on previously. She said, I think we can do a few more things here. So we started another round of IVF and it didn't go amazingly well, but my body did respond enough for us to have an egg collection. And I ended up with one embryo, which was huge,
Mm.
to go from
Yeah.
nothing and not even having a single egg to collect to getting an embryo.
Yeah.
I thought that was amazing. But I knew the chances of that little embryo surviving 5 days in the lab and then a successful transfer and a healthy pregnancy, like I knew the chances were so, so low. But it worked. And 2 weeks after I had my transfer, we got the call to say I was pregnant, and my little girl was born 9 months later. So that was my
Wow.
first journey of trying to have my baby. But nah, my journey doesn't actually end there. My husband and
Mm.
I are both only children, and we'd always wanted to have 2 kids. I mean, I'd have, oh my gosh, Lisa, I'd have like 10 kids if I could, but no, we
Yeah.
wanted to have 2 kids. We thought, that's what we'll do. And we thought, okay, this IVF thing, it worked. We'll just wait a year or so after she was born. We'll go back to that same doctor. We'll do it again. But then the most amazing thing happened. When my daughter was about 1, I had been lucky enough to breastfeed her for the whole year.
Wow.
And after I stopped breastfeeding, I went to the bathroom one day and my period returned. And I thought, this is too good to be true. This is not this is gonna, I don't know, some weird postpartum bleeding. But no, it came back the next month and the next month. And I went to a
Wow.
new doctor and she said, look, you are ovulating. There's no reason you can't try naturally to have a baby at home. So go for it. And we were so excited because this was the one thing that we didn't have last time. We thought, my gosh, now we can actually try to have a baby. I didn't even relate to these people who would take pregnancy tests every month. I'm like, oh my gosh, it's going to happen so soon. Sadly, that is not quite the way things worked out. So we tried
Mm.
at home for about 6 months. I guess I was about 37 by this stage,
Okay.
and nothing happened. So we went back to the doctor and I said, me again, hi, nothing's happening. What can we do? So she put me on letrozole and said, we'll time ovulation. We'll give you a bit of progesterone to help support your cycle. Come back, we'll do, I think we did 5 or 6 rounds of that. Nothing happened.
Mm.
So I went back again and she ran a few more tests and we ended up with a whole bunch of new fertility issues that we didn't have the first time. So we
Okay.
found out my fallopian tubes were partially blocked. We found out that I had a thyroid condition that had gone kind of undetected or wasn't an issue previously. So I was put on
Mm.
medication for that. I had a very short luteal phase and they found that my progesterone levels weren't really rising. So I was put on progesterone and I developed chronic insomnia. So I just struggled so much for weeks and months to fall asleep. So I was put on
Mm.
anti-anxiety medication. I was put on sleeping tablets. And we ended up
Mm.
with a bit of male factor as well.
Oh gosh.
So coupled with all of that, and my age, my doctor said, look, I think you need to go back to IVF. And I think that's your only option. We were so
Mm.
disappointed, we thought this was the one thing that we didn't have the first time. We finally got to try, but it wasn't them. So we thought, okay, at least it worked last time. We will just go back, we'll do IVF again, and we will move on with our lives. And everyone can relate to that, right? This whole idea of your life being on
Mm.
hold.
Yeah.
This was at the end of 2019. So
Mm.
I met with a new fertility doctor. We were living overseas in a different country. So I had to go and find a new clinic. And he said, we're going to prep for 3 months. And I tell you what, Lisa, if there was an exam for how well I prepped for that IVF cycle, I tell you, I got 100% on that test. Like I did everything. I did the 19 different supplements a day. I did the perfect diet, no caffeine, no alcohol, no sugar, no dairy, no gluten, like all the things. I went to fertility massage, reflexology, hypnotherapy. There was nothing I didn't do. We ended up with two little embryos for this cycle, and we couldn't believe it. You know, I was 3 years older than I had been the first time. I couldn't believe that this doctor had managed to get two perfect embryos from this cycle. And we transferred both, thinking, oh my goodness, we'll just have twins. That would be incredible. Let's have
Mm.
three babies. And I was convinced I was pregnant. But sadly, we got the call to say that I wasn't pregnant and those embryos didn't stick. That was in March of 2020. And the next day we went into lockdown over COVID. So
Oh.
every clinic closed down and we had no option of trying again. And I thought that was pretty much the end of my journey. And I think this was about my lowest point. You know, it was
Mm.
those moments where I couldn't sleep. I was still struggling to get any sleep at night. I was on so many hormones. And I look back now and I think, well, no shit, I wasn't pregnant. I was a mess. I was crying on the bathroom floor at 3 o'clock in the morning, desperate to sleep. And it's no surprise my body was like, do you know what? This is not a great time to get pregnant.
Mm.
And I didn't really know what kind of lay ahead. I thought, well, that's kind of the end of our journey. I was nearly 38, and I thought, well,
Yeah.
we had our time. I remember it was a few weeks after we went into lockdown, and I couldn't go to work because my studio was closed, so I was just at home. And I was chatting to a girl I used to work with who said, Jen, I don't know if you're interested, but I have this friend who teaches fertility yoga. Do you want to give it a go? And I was like, no, not really. I've just been through another IVF cycle. I have done all the things. What is a
Mm.
bit of yoga going to do? And I was
Mm.
not a yoga teacher at this stage. I had done a lot of exercise science work, a lot of post rehabilitative work. I taught a lot of Pilates, but yoga was never my thing. I thought, this is boring. I don't get it. Why would people come to a class and lie down? It made no sense to me. But I thought, what have I got to lose? I haven't got
Mm.
anything else to do. I can't go to work. I'll give it a go. So I met with this beautiful woman, and without sounding dramatic, Lisa, it changed my life in so many ways that I never saw coming. A few weeks after I started this fertility yoga practice, I started to sleep again. And I thought, wow, if this yoga
Mm.
thing means that I can sleep, I will do it every day for the
Yeah.
rest of my life. Like I'm
Oh my
sold.
God.
Bring it on. And then other things started to shift. I knew I'd wake up in the morning and I'd be just a little bit less difficult to live with, I think is probably the best way to put it. I was nicer to my husband, and my thyroid condition started to balance. I would go in to get my blood work done without having changed my meds or anything else. My results would come back better. And then in July of 2020, I fell pregnant at home on my, well, not on my own with my husband, but naturally without any fertility treatments.
Yeah.
And
Wow.
we couldn't believe it. And I was blown away. We thought, this was the last thing we expected. We went to the doctor, we got the
Mm.
pregnancy confirmed. My hormone levels were rising, everything looked amazing. And then sadly, we lost that baby at 8 weeks. And
Oh.
it was, you can still hear it in my voice. Gosh, it was such a long time ago. But this wasn't my lowest point because I knew I had done something that no doctor told me was possible. That I was told, I think I was given like a 5% chance of IVF working, let alone conceiving on
Mm.
my own. Who knows where they get these stats from?
Yeah.
But I thought, I did this and I didn't have to do another cycle of IVF. And I thought, I can do it again. So I went back and I retrained as a yoga teacher towards the kind of September, October of that year. The city that I lived in was starting to open up again. So I was able to go and do my teacher training. I trained in fertility yoga and women's health. And I put all those practices into my own life. And at the
Mm.
very, very end of 2020, just before Christmas, I fell pregnant again. And my little boy was born 9 months later. So that was my journey. That's my
Oh my
story.
goodness.
And that's what brought me to do the work that I do. And I do still teach Pilates. I find that it's an incredible resource, mostly through pregnancy and postpartum. But I think that that piece, the fertility piece, the yoga
Mm-hmm.
part is just, it's so important. The way it is able to support your body, your mind, your mental health, your nervous system,
Yeah.
everything. So that's what I teach, and that's what brings me here today. That wasn't a quick
Wow.
story, but
Oh my
I'll do
gosh.
my
No,
best.
I really appreciate it. And just the highs, the lows. So many listeners can relate, success and loss and the hope and the grief. And it is a ride like no other. You and I both
That's
know
so
that. And
true.
I had one embryo. That's our daughter. I can relate to that
Yeah.
with your one embryo working, taking the first time. That doesn't happen for
Mm,
a lot of people. I mean, we hear those stories, right? And I'm just so grateful it worked for you too. So your
thank
kids are
you.
how old now? They're
My daughter is 7.5, and my son is
mm,
4.
oh, yeah, we had kids
Mm,
right around the same time. My daughter's 8, so
amazing.
and both being only children. I didn't know that about you. I kind of forgot that you're an only child as well, like myself.
Yeah, our stories have so many overlaps. It's beautiful.
Right? Oh my gosh. So thank you for really diving into how yoga changed your life. I mean,
Mm,
in so many ways. And so breath work, meditation, Pilates, like all of that you've kind of fused together to support
absolutely.
women on this
Yes. And I
path.
think that, we can talk about it in a bit more detail, but it was the only thing that I hadn't done on this whole journey. And by the time I found this yoga practice, I'd been on this journey for, gosh, 4 or 5 years by this stage.
Mm,
And that was slow down. It was the only
mm,
thing that no one had ever told me to do. I wasn't in early menopause. I'm 43 now, and I have a more regular and consistent cycle than I ever had in my
mm,
20s. And I
mm,
just think, what was I missing? What were all these doctors missing?
mm,
How did my body respond to this and not to all of these crazy, incredible, expensive, effective drugs that they were able to pop me full of? And it
mm.
still blows my mind that I was able to do this on my own.
Wow. Yeah. Speaking to the power of really tuning to your body, your nervous system, and it's all interconnected. Our
That's it.
mind, our body, your mental well-being. What support, like, I'm just curious to put yourself back in that place, the shifts that you were thinking about. I always say we have to be an active participant on this path, being a
Mm.
co-creator on this path, not putting all of our power into the doctors and our team. And like, you were exposed to that guide, right? The yoga guide. And then it's just kind of like, I'd love to hear more about that, like how they opened you up to maybe some new ways of thinking through this path.
Mm.
What were some of those
I didn't grow up
reflections?
religious. So
Mm-hmm.
I never went to church or anything like that with my family. But I think that the one thing that we all look for when we're going through something difficult is this sense of why is this happening, and what could be the reason? Like, why am I going through this? And
Mm-hmm.
that was the question that kept coming up for me. And I thought there has to be, people go through difficult things all the time, and they talk about this idea of post-traumatic growth. And I was like, this is so big and it's taken over my life for so many years. I just felt like this cannot be for nothing. And I don't know whether everyone listening to this believes in that, but I look at my life now, and I know it's easy for me to do that in hindsight. And I realize that the life I have now created is better than anything I could ever have dreamed of. And I wouldn't have had that without my fertility journey.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that when we go through these difficult things, we are kind of looking for guidance. We're like, well, what can I lean into to help me
Mm-hmm.
feel like this isn't all for nothing? And yoga gave that to me. And I tend to attract a lot of students who are in that same kind of boat. They're not religious, but they feel like there's something bigger going on. And when I was able to lean into that, and you can go into the work around spirit babies and start to
Mm-hmm.
find those little signs that perhaps your baby is giving you or the universe is giving you that you are on the right path. I found that so reassuring. And I have
Yeah.
so many crazy moments where you can't explain it on paper. This doesn't make any sense. There's no other explanation for it other than that I was being guided through something.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I don't know if that answers your question, but I find that that's the thing that I'm now able to stay with within my life now. If I'm going through something difficult, I think, well, I can know and trust that it's going to be for something better. And
Mm,
I don't I don't want to say to people that everything happens for a reason because I don't know if I
mhm,
completely believe in that as well. There are
mhm.
too many terrible and awful things that happen to people in this world, and they can't
Yeah.
all be for a reason. But I think that the way you then approach your life afterwards can give you more meaning in your life. And that's the way I
Yeah.
always try to look at it as well.
Yeah, that's beautiful. You and I resonate with that with signs and symbols. I write a lot about that in my book too. You know, it's like having that source of kind of inspiration and gives you some comfort as you're going through this to help
Mm,
you stay grounded and present and like seeing the bigger kind of purpose maybe to it all, you know, that we are being
yeah,
guided and we're not alone on this path.
I
Both you
completely
and I
agree.
resonate with that, combining the science, but also with like more the soul and the spirit, you know.
Mm,
Um,
definitely.
I think you and I both support a lot of high achieving women from what I've seen
Yeah.
from the women you support too. And I'm curious, you know, this kind of idea, this high achiever type of energy, how do you, you know, see this show up in the body when women are really struggling kind of emotionally? And the women I support too, you know, this is a common struggle. So I'd just be
Oh,
curious,
yes.
like,
And I don't know if does the fertility journey turn you into a type A person, or do the type A
mm,
people end up in this space? I think it's a bit of both, really. So I was an athlete growing up, and
me too.
I was always, told, you work hard, you achieve what you want. And that went for
Mm,
the sports that I would participate in. It went for school, for university. It was like one plus one
yeah.
equaled two. You put the time, the effort in, you get the
Yeah.
result.
Yeah.
And I think that women kind of our generation were really kind of given every opportunity to do that. And that's amazing, right? That we had
Yeah.
all of those opportunities that perhaps our mothers or
Mm-hmm.
grandmothers didn't have. But when you have walked to that beat of that drum your whole life, effort equals reward, and you get to
Mm,
something like struggling to have a baby. Sadly, it doesn't make sense anymore. One plus one no longer equals two. And it seems that the more you do and the harder you try and the harder
mm-hmm.
you work, the less you get closer to the thing that you really want.
Yeah.
And that's the thing that I really found incredibly difficult. It was the first time in my life that I had felt really, really stupid because I thought,
Mm,
how did I get to this age and know so little about my body and know
mm,
absolutely nothing about how to support myself? I have students that come to me and they don't even know when it's time to have sex during the month in order to have a baby. Like, how are we missing stuff like this?
mm-hmm.
It's ridiculous, right? So that was the thing I found very, very hard to get my head around. And all of the students that I work with who are that kind of very type A high achieving mentality,
Mm-hmm.
they their whole lives are kind of thrown off course by it. And it's like, well, what do you do when you've done everything perfectly, when you've done everything your doctor has told you, and you still don't have the result that you want? What are the answers? And that's where I think I really had to do some very deep work and sit with myself in those very
Yeah.
uncomfortable moments and say, there's something else that I'm missing here. And what is that? And for me, it was stopping and slowing down.
Yeah.
And you know what? The only thing that got me to stop and slow down was, Lisa? It was a global pandemic. It was the entire world shutting down that got me to slow down, right?
Oh,
And I don't want that for everyone else. I don't want us to have
oh,
to go through all of that again.
yeah.
For everyone
Yeah.
who's listening, for you to realize that your body needs to slow down.
Yeah.
And we talk about I talk about our ability to regulate our nervous system quite a lot, and I think
Mm-hmm.
that was
Mm-hmm.
everything for me. We forget that we are mammals, we are animals like every other mammal on the planet, and if you look at your four-legged friend that you live with, or you look at documentaries of like lions or tigers or literally any other mammal on the planet, they are energy conservation beings. So if they're not hunting or eating or caring for their young or procreating, what are they doing? They are resting. They are
Yeah.
literally laying around doing absolutely nothing. And as humans, we have forgotten how to do that. And we think that we
Hmm.
have to be productive and busy and we have to achieve. And especially as women, right? That is such a like deeply ingrained message that we hear so often.
Yeah.
But we are no different. We think we're so smart, we fly to the moon, we build cities, but we haven't evolved past the fact that we are these primal beings that are the same as every other mammal on the planet. And we need to conserve our energy and rest. And when we're able to do that, we remind our bodies and our brains and our nervous systems that we are safe and that now is a wonderful time to conceive. And, you can push and you can keep going and going and going. And, I think that if COVID hadn't happened, that would have been me. Maybe I would have got there, maybe I wouldn't have, but I would have done cycle after cycle after cycle.
Mm.
And I don't know if my life would have been different to the way it was. But the fact that I was forced to slow down, to do things differently, to look at my life in a different way,
Yeah.
my whole life is better for having learnt that. And I wish I'd learned it sooner, honestly.
Mm. Thank you so much for speaking to this because, yes, we often forget that rest is productive. And
Mm.
my background being an occupational therapist, we learn this that,
Wow.
these these daily activities, right? Like productivity, rest, leisure, like these are all different daily occupations. Rest is an occupation. And it's something that we just like put on the back burner and look at it like, oh, this isn't productive, right? But
That's
thank
it.
you for sharing that because it's such a good reminder that as we're preparing, I like to say preparing versus trying to conceive, we're in this preparation stage, right? And our bodies, it's like that recalibration, right? Reset. And I know with what the work you do with breath work, and I'm curious too about Pilates a little bit too, but with meditative work practices, going inward, this is where the magic is. It's the inward journey,
Mm.
you know? Because so,
Absolutely.
so
That
many of
is
these women,
exactly it.
yeah, yeah. I'd love to hear more on that.
That combination of you learning to slow down and asking
Mm-hmm.
your body what she needs is where
Yes.
that magic piece happened for me. And I thought, I was a body worker. I worked in the fitness industry for so many years. I thought, of course, I'm connected to my body, obviously. But my approach when I think about it was, what can I get my body to do? What can I get my body to achieve? I'm going to go and
Mm-hmm.
lift this heavy weight because I want my muscles to get stronger. At no point in my life had I ever stopped to say, what does my body actually need in this moment? And I had this session with this fertility yoga teacher that I met. And I think it was the very first time that I met with her. She got me to sit down, place my hands over my lower belly, and she said, Jen, I want you to ask your body what she needs. And I was like, that's weird. What are you talking about? Like, my body's fine, obviously. And I did that. And I can't even tell you, Lisa, like clear as
Mm-hmm.
day, this loud message came into my head that said, you never gave me a chance. And I just burst into tears and
Oh,
I couldn't believe it. She was right. At what
yeah.
stage did I ever give my body a chance to say, this is what I need? And
Mm-hmm.
who knows why I didn't have a period after I went off birth control, whether it was post pill amenorrhea or hypothalamic amenorrhea from doing so much exercise and training so hard. Who
Mm-hmm.
knows what it was? But it was pregnancy and postpartum that forced me to slow down, that got my period back. And I don't know how when that would have happened if I hadn't been pregnant because I thought I was doing everything right. I did exercise. I ate the salads and the smoothies and I did my 10,000 steps a day and I thought I was being healthy. But my body didn't need that in order to get pregnant. She needed
Mm-hmm.
less. Less was
Yeah.
so much more. And then when I started my second journey, when I got my period back, I went straight back into fight mode. No, I wasn't training as hard as I used to, but I was like, okay, we're going to do all the things. We're going to do them perfectly. We're going to do them every day. I am going to get this done. And it was never a case of, well, what does my body actually need?
Yeah.
So I think this is where people really have a huge shift. When I work with people and they say, oh, it's less. I need to do less. Rest
Yeah.
actually means I get further. And I think it's really hard to kind of rewire our mindset around that. So I speak to
Mm.
this as much as I possibly can.
Oh, as you were talking, I was thinking about that energy of the doing versus being. And we know because we've lived it too. It's like going through IVF, it's such a doing energy, and we're going to appointments and taking shots and seeking out so many external supports, right? I didn't go crazy on supplements and the diet thing, but there's this doing, right? And feeling like you're not doing enough. So the rewiring of the mindset, and that's what, my focus too with clients, it's like being, we get to be. And it's such a more peaceful place, right? Like it's not easy to always get there, but it is a choice. And sometimes it takes, guidance from others who have walked this path, and we've tried a lot of different things, right? And the forcing pushing isn't the way. It's not
I
the right.
completely agree.
So it is like a
That's
different
it.
way of being. I always say going through IVF, it requires a different way of being.
Yeah, it does. It does. And I think a lot of women relate to this idea of, when you get to IVF, it's not the first point of call, right? You've already been trying for
Right,
how long?
right.
And you think, oh, finally, there's an answer. There's something I can do. And it's kind of a relief in a way, like, okay, well, I've got all the shots. I've got to go to the appointments, the ultrasounds, get the blood work done. And it feels empowering and it feels like you are in control. But it's when it doesn't work and you think, well, but I was doing all the things. I had the control. And that's when I think people really fall into this place of, well, what now? What else is
Mm,
there? And so often I see this, the women that I meet are looking for something else. They're looking for another way of doing this, just as I'm sure
yeah.
you can relate so much, Lisa. It's like
Mm-hmm.
we don't need to always be doing because resting means that
Yes.
we are more productive in everything else in our lives.
Right. I feel like mindset too. We can jump into that a bit too, because I feel like you can get really discouraged on this path. And when things don't go according to plan, and maybe you've heard this too, you've heard clients maybe say like, I feel like my body's failed me, or that kind of idea. What would you say to a woman who feels like that, like her body has failed her? I don't even like the word fail. Hate that word, but it's
I
like
know,
that
and
that phrasing, it's
I totally agree because you hear it all the time. And it doesn't
yeah,
help that all of the medical language that we hear
yeah,
around fertility is so geared towards that failed cycle, failed
yeah. Oh,
transfer,
right.
like recurrent implantation failure, like all of these
Yeah.
I could do a whole
Right.
like podcast
Right.
on all of the language we use. It's so damaging. And
Mm-hmm.
so what I say to women when they come to me and they're in that place, and I think everybody has an element of this because you are so used to, well, if I go to the gym and I eat well, I feel better, I fit in my pants or whatever
Mm-hmm.
I'm trying to achieve. But it doesn't work that way with fertility. So I
Yeah.
have to find ways of saying to my students, look, your body is not failing you. Your body is giving you information. And what we need to do now is find other ways for you to trust in your body.
Mm.
And that can be little things like, let's have a look at your menstrual cycle. What does that look like for you? Do you have terrible
Mm-hmm.
PMS? Do you struggle to manage symptoms around your period? Are you ovulating regularly? Is your cycle consistent? There are so many things that our bodies tell us throughout the month, right? And I think a lot of people can relate to this, and this happened to me too. I had like this 28-day cycle when, I was a teenager in my early 20s. I would ovulate right in the middle. My period was like 2 p.m. Thursday. It was so consistent. But when I was on this journey of trying to conceive, when I got my period back, I would have, a 12-day cycle, a 28-day cycle, a 30-day cycle. It was all over the place. And I think that the one thing we discount is the effect of cortisol on our bodies and our menstrual cycles, right? And I have women that come to me and say, well, I had this perfect cycle, but a year, 2 years into trying to conceive, it is all over the place. It's so unpredictable. It's
Mm-hmm.
painful. I don't know what's going on. And neurodoctors are saying to us, what are your stress levels like? How are you struggling? How are you managing at work? What's your relationship
Yeah.
like at the moment? And this idea that we can just go on with our lives while we're going through something like infertility and not be impacted by the stress that causes
Mm-hmm.
is crazy, right?
Yeah.
And without getting too sciencey, if you look at the downstream effects from increased cortisol levels in the body, it impacts all of your sex hormones. It disrupts especially progesterone production. So your body, the precursor hormone pregnenolone that makes progesterone also makes cortisol. So if you're spending all of your energy making cortisol, there's not much left over to make progesterone.
Mm.
So we see like shorter luteal phases, we see ovulation that's not quite consistent or it doesn't show up on tests very, very often. So, we need to look at all of that. So I say to people, we're going to try things differently. Instead of pushing, we're going to scale it back. What can we take out from your life? Because I'm all about like
Mhm.
do less. Make a list of everything we're doing. What can we remove? And let's start to look at the little things that your body is able to show you from making those changes. So for me, I had the worst insomnia in the world. I went for months and months without getting a proper night's sleep. For me
Mm.
to be able to fall asleep and stay asleep was life changing. So when you think your body's failed you, but you're able to make a few changes and then say, well, what have I noticed? What has shifted in my body after making these changes? It brings back that trust and connection with your body again. And I think that is where we start to shift our mindset and we build that trust back again. It's like, well, if I can start sleeping again, if I can get my menstrual cycle operating normally, what else can I do? And that's where people go, well, there's no reason I can't get pregnant. So I think that's where I start. And that whole idea of my body's failed me is
Mm.
so common. So if you are listening to this and
Mhm.
that is you, please know that that is just such a normal thing to feel
Yeah.
from this journey.
Oh, that's, I just love what you just shared. You're
Mm,
so spot on about like trust and trusting in your body. And so many on this path often do feel disconnected from their body because we're just like poked
yeah,
and prodded and it's like exams on the regular, right? All the things. And
yeah,
so, like, I'm so glad you're speaking to this rebuilding of the trust and the safety and connection to yourself. That is the essence of, I mean, we both resonate with that message. It's like, hold on to you through this journey, right? It's, we can't lose
yeah,
ourselves through this path. And you're right. The connection, if we want to be calling in life, and it's like I always say, we got to be living life. We want to call in life, but I've heard you talk about not postponing joy, right? And that was something
mm,
you wish you hadn't done, or you wish you had lived more. I can't remember exactly the word you said it, but it was like it's easy to stop doing the things that light us up and that reconnect us to that pleasure and joy and inner creation within, right? Do you have any thoughts on that one?
oh, I completely agree. And going back to just what you mentioned there, when you go through infertility treatments, like your body is no longer your own. You're handed over to these
Mm-hmm.
medical professionals and
Mm-hmm.
like these internal scans and the endless
Yeah.
needles and the procedures, like these are traumatic things that we go through. The fact that our bodies are just like these test objects is not a small thing. And because it's so common and like all of this stuff happens so much, we really discount the impact that that has on us, right? So
Mm-hmm.
I really want people to hear that because it's all minimized. Everything on this journey, women's
Mm.
health in general, is so minimized, right? We
Mm.
need to know that it is a big deal and what you're going through is a big deal, right? So
Yeah.
gosh, we come back to this idea of, all right, well, I have to do IVF because, maybe I've got a medical condition that requires us to do that, and that's fine. Like it's amazing we have these treatment
Mm-hmm.
options,
Mm-hmm.
but we can't let go of everything else in the meantime. We need to find ways to keep supporting ourselves along this journey and just remind ourselves that we are the most important thing. The most important thing is not the baby, not the outcome. It is you because you don't, like you said, you don't get to create life if you're not living life. And that time
Mm-hmm.
is going to pass anyway. I look back now and I don't have regrets because my journey worked out the way that it worked out.
Yeah.
But I said no to everything. Like I didn't go out with my friends. I was like, oh, I'm worried that the restaurant they want to go to doesn't have enough gluten-free, dairy-free. Like I was crazy. I would take my own soy sauce to
Oh,
sushi restaurants,
oh,
Lisa. Like
oh,
I was insane. And I just
oh.
think there was just so much that I missed out on. I was not going to not get pregnant that month because I had chocolate cake or because I had a glass of
Yeah.
wine or ate soy
Yeah.
sauce. Like
Yeah.
it's crazy. And I just think that made my life so much more difficult and my husband's life. And I think about all
Oh.
those years there where, and gosh, secondary infertility is a story for another day, but
Mm.
like I was not present with my little girl. I was just so focused
Oh.
on, I've got to give her a sibling, I've got to complete my family. Like
Oh.
I just couldn't stop and be with her. So we need to remember that your life is still here. it's not something that you need to put on hold or to forget about, because
Yeah.
you don't want to look back. It's like we don't have a crystal ball. We don't know if this is going to be another month or another 2 years, right?
Mm,
So find ways to make your life feel worth living now because you won't get that time back. And
mm.
I find that one of the hardest things to get my head around.
This is such an important message. I want all women to
Mm.
hear this. You know,
Yeah.
you and I have the gift of looking back, right? Looking back on our journeys. There's so many who are just in it right now, and they're looking for guidance, looking for answers. And I love that you talked about the trust in how did you say it? Trust in your body, trust in this process, trust in the
Mm.
timing,
Yeah, trust in your baby.
trust
Just
in
find ways to
yeah.
connect with them. Trust that they are on their way and we
Mm-hmm.
don't know when and we don't always know how,
Mm-hmm.
but just trust. And I have to say, I reckon for all of my students who are able to say, this journey is really shit. I don't want to have to go through any of it. I don't know when it's going to happen, but
Yeah.
I know 100% that my baby is on the way. Those are the ones that get pregnant 100% of the time.
Mm-hmm.
And it's that belief in the unknown that is so hard
Yeah.
for
You're right.
humans. It's so
Mm-hmm.
hard. Mm.
Did you have a mantra or something going through your path that you repeated to yourself or
I did. I did.
yeah.
It was, I trust my body, I trust the universe, and I trust my baby. That was my mantra. And that helped me through meditation and any of the times that I felt, especially when I lost my second pregnancy. I knew that it was, and we found out that was a little boy, and
Mm,
I knew he was just not quite ready. There was more I had to learn, there was more I had to go through, and it was horrible to have to go through all of that, and I wouldn't wish it upon anyone, but I knew it wasn't the end of my story,
mm.
and I don't know how I knew that. That was something that this practice just gave me, and yeah.
Yeah. Having a mantra is very powerful. You know, mine was
Mm.
always expect something wonderful to happen.
Oh, I
So
love that.
it's
Chills.
that's how I approached going into all my appointments, you know,
Yeah.
letting go of numbers and all of
Oh.
the stats. And I trusted. And yes, there
Mm.
were so many setbacks and surgeries and loss of embryos. And,
Mm.
you know, we understand the heartbreak of this path and just the challenge of holding on. But I really believe in like, you know, you too. I think it's just like we want to hold on to us through this. And that's I mean huge, right? Like staying whole, staying connected, and through the work that you do, it's so important. I love highlighting specialists who have holistic practices. I mean, I'm a big believer. Wasn't doing as much. I didn't really know about fertility yoga going through my path, but I was
Mm.
doing mindfulness and meditation and um I guess I would say some yin yoga, just like some resting poses, but what can you share about just any other final thoughts on this important work that you're doing and the power of like just helping people be open to this kind of support, you know, maybe if they haven't tried it or explored any of these practices?
I would love everyone who is listening to this to know that you are so much more capable than people have told you.
Mm,
There is no reason on paper that my husband and I were able to have a baby on our own. If you look at everything that we had, everything that was, quote unquote wrong with us, there is
mm,
no reason we were able to fall pregnant twice. It doesn't make any sense. And I see this time and time again. I have some crazy wild stories that you just think there's no scientific explanation for the reason that these people were able to conceive. And if it was able to happen to me, why can't it happen to you? Why? I'm not special. All I did was never give up and believe that it was possible. And I needed to
mm,
find someone to help me get there. There's nothing wrong with needing help or asking for someone to guide you. We need
yeah.
that. And I think that's where we kind of miss things, right? Because we're told it's not going to happen for you. You've got this percent chance of things happening. And I think that that's just, you're not a statistic. You are a person. They can
Mm-hmm,
only use stats based on a population of general people. That is not you. You are not a
mm-hmm,
statistic. So
yeah.
I really, really want everyone who is listening to this to know it doesn't matter what you've been told. What you want is possible. And I don't know how or when. and what your journey might look like, or maybe you get there by means that you didn't think you were going to. But I don't think it is fair to say things aren't possible for you because I've just seen too
Mm,
much evidence to the contrary.
beautiful. Yes. We're here to really shed light on this, like living in this idea of possibility, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, that is it. I like that word possible. I find it's
Hmm.
much more empowering than hopeful because
Yeah.
hope feels very out of control. It's like, well, you're kind of grasping for
Hmm.
something. Whereas when you lean into
Hmm.
this idea of what is possible,
Yeah.
then you can see the things that start to change within your life. And I really
Hmm.
love that reframe.
Mm. The work you're doing is so great, so important. And I just have loved this conversation so much.
Me too.
Good talk. I have like so many more
So
things we could talk
good.
about, but we'll do maybe another one down the road. But yeah, you have a free fertility guide I know that you offer, and I'll link that in the show notes. And can you share how listeners can follow along with you if they don't already and need to?
Absolutely. Yes. So the free fertility yoga guide that I have provides different practices for each phase of the menstrual cycle. So you can really start to learn how to use different yoga poses to really match each phase of where you're at throughout the month. It also includes some breath work and some meditation in there as
Hmm.
well. I also run every 6 months or so, I run a free 3-day live training series where we get to do more of a deep dive and really talk a little bit about the science. I'm a big believer in explaining how things work scientifically and physiologically within
Hmm.
the body because I think that's very important. And then we get to lean
Hmm.
into all the fun, like kind of more woo-woo,
Hmm.
spirity type things as well. But we get 3 days where I take about 75 to 90 minutes over 3 days and we get to really go in deep together, which I absolutely love. The next one will be
Hmm.
coming up at the end of July, so
Hmm.
I'll give you the link to that if people want to register. You can come and
Yeah.
meet me, ask me all of your questions. I'm quite active on social media, so if you want to look me up, my handle across all platforms is Jen Element Pilates Yoga. So you can reach out to me. I reply to every DM, every
Hmm.
email, and I just love hearing from people and just
Hmm.
knowing what you're going through. So please don't hesitate.
So beautiful. Oh my gosh. Thank you for this conversation.
Thank
We'll
you for
talk very
having me,
soon.
Lisa. It's just such an honor, and I look forward to connecting with you again too.
Same. Bye.